Welcome to the OEMs, Blockers and Breakthroughs podcast, brought to you by Partful. I am your host, Tanya Tran, Partful Head of Marketing. We're here to share real stories from real companies and real people to help OEMs overcome challenges and be amongst those most forward-thinking teams. So welcome to our podcast, Jos. We're really excited for this discussion. I think we've been having a few chats just before this as well, and I think our audience of mid-size and small OEMs can really learn from your experience. So in today's episode, we are going to talk about the digital thread, especially related to the PLM and the ERP system for specifically small and mid-sized OEMs, and what are the best practices that they can use around implementing kind of that and establishing a connected digital thread, and why that's important for them as well. So why we have Jos on with us today, I'm really excited to introduce our guest speaker, Jos Voskuil. Am I saying that correctly?
Voskuil, yeah, it's a typical Dutch pronunciation, the UI.
Yeah. Yeah. I might have butchered it, but the reason why we've got Jos on today is because he's a prominent PLM expert and coach for several years within the OEMs community. He's helped numerous OEMs in the mid-sized kind of segment in implementing and maximizing their PLM system. He's also got a community called PLM Green Alliance. Am I correct?
Right.
So the alliance is there to educate the OEMs and the community around sustainability and best practices in PLM implementation around circular economy as well as digital thread. And that's why we've got him on today. But Jos, if you could give a bit more of a detailed introduction about yourself and why our OEMs today in these small and mid-sized kind of segments can benefit from your experience, that'd be great.
Thank you, Tanya. And my last name, I say it one more time, Voskuil.
Voskuil.
You have to speak Dutch, and usually I made a joke in projects. At the end of the project, you know my last name. So it takes time. I started about 25 years ago as a contractor working in the mid-market. I had a background in AutoCAD and data management, which was very basic at that moment. And I got in touch with the company Smart Team, and they were bought by Dassault Systems, and IBM started to sell the software. And as I was a contractor, I became the Flying Dutchman for them, training the organizations, and then afterwards mediating and discussing methodology. I once had a title of Director of Methodology, which seems like a very strange title now. But I was always interested in PLM in the mid-market because it's a mix of technology, but also people expectations and the tools and the flexibility. And I learned a lot there. And actually what I learned, there was no interest in capitalizing in those companies because they were all focusing on the big things. So I started my blog, The Virtual Dutchman, and you might know me from thevirtualdutchman.com, which I started in 2008, where I share those experiences, sometimes human-oriented, sometimes methodology-oriented. And by doing this, after 3-4 years, I became a kind of authority because I was invited to speak at conferences, got in touch with bigger companies, and also worked with vendors, but also implementers and consultancy firms on PLM. And this is what I have been doing since then. Meanwhile, also riding the wave of digitalization, learning to understand what does it mean, digital transformation in PLM. And as you said, the last years I'm focusing on the PLM Global Green Alliance with also the additional focus on sustainability. And I'm very happy to speak in this podcast because I think the topic you are addressing is one of those topics that in modern PLM also you should realize that it can be done. And it's not a separate silo anymore.
That's great. Sam, can you refresh your introduction as well so that we can have a rounded conversation today?
So, Sam Burgess, founder and CEO of Partful. We're revolutionising the aftermarket with immersive technologies. And I come at this space from a user perspective. So when I was in the military, I was the guy sat in the field with like my hood up, trying to find a part for an asset that bore virtually no resemblance to the paper-based technical manual that I had in front of me that I was trying to not get wet as the rain was coming in on a Welsh hillside. So I've got a lot of end user experiences at the other end of that data flow from where Jos comes from, really. So I guess hopefully we can meet somewhere in the middle, which I guess is what the data thread is all about.
100%, 100%.
So maybe to comment on this, Sam, interesting, I realized that you said okay, you were working in the field, and usually when I do interviews with companies, understanding their need for PLM, I always start at the end with the service people or the field, because that's where you notice what is the lack of information, what is missing, and then I work towards, I would say, R&D and marketing. So starting at the end I'm used to it, because in this way you find the problems.
Totally, yeah. And usually I find, obviously not in my case, but usually the closer to the end user get, the more animated and frustrated people usually get as well.
Exactly. It's not technology alone anymore.
Totally.
This is why I'm so excited for this conversation. So we definitely have a interesting debate today, discussion, and also educational journey we'll go on in this episode. Before we go into it, I'm going to kind of highlight some key questions so that people can follow the conversation today. A couple of questions like, what is the digital thread? What are the types of digital thread? And why is it talked about so much? Why do mid-sized OEMs need a digital thread? And what type is the best for them? Is it electronic versus connected? And what are the steps to establish a connected digital thread for mid-sized OEMs to set up their service and support lifecycle for success? So those are a couple of questions. We've also got a few questions from the audience from LinkedIn. Sam put out a poll last week to encourage everyone to send in questions. So we've got a couple of as well. So I'll fire those towards the end when we wrap up the session. So Jos and Sam, I'm going to fire the first question at you. What is the digital thread? I think we've talked about in the previous episodes as well between me and Sam, and also Cal, which is one of our subject matter experts. But I think we'd like to hear your take on it, Jos, since you've been working on it for so many years.
Yeah, so if you hear digital thread, it's a marketing term, because the definition is not 100% clear, and it comes very close with digital transformation. People start to have more and more digital tools, and for that they said, okay, we also need to have the connectivity between the digital information, and this can be done in very different ways. Historically, you might, I think, even your intranet in your company might be the source of a digital thread or a web page. And the whole idea of a digital thread is that you have digital continuity without going to someone to ask for relevant information, but you can find your artifacts, your information by browsing digital information or electronic information. And here comes the big difference between digital threads. For me, there are two types of digital threads. One is what I call the coordinated digital thread. That means there is an environment in place that allows you to navigate from one place to another, from one system to another. And there you might still need have a specific application to find the data, or you need to have somebody who can give you the data. And for me, the coordinated digital thread is very much aligned with historical PLM, the coordinated approach where everyone works in their own system with their own tools, but they share data maybe by PDF, by other ways, but they only share just limited part of the data. Do you want to have the full understanding? You have to go into the source, and the source is not directly available, but you can find it. And this is, for me, the coordinated digital thread. And then you have the connected digital thread. That's where you make your data available from outside by software, by applications, without the need of somebody to give you access. And this sounds complex. And initially, if you work within a certain part of your organization, you might have a prior system that is your CAD system, your PLM, or your ERP system, where you have most of the data. But you also have people like service engineers that need data from everywhere. And with the modern digital thread, you create applications for them, environments where they can connect to those different systems and get the data in real time in their required context. And we're used to it thanks to digital transformation. Airbnb is an example. And, they don't own any houses, but they connect all the stakeholders. And it's more a platform of connecting people in real time. And that's the connected digital thread. And I think that is also the future where we want to go in the future, because you don't depend on people anymore. Of course, you depend on quality data because it's going to be used without somebody supervising it, but it's so much more efficient and faster for everyone. And that's for me the big difference. And I see companies see the opportunity, but it also requires a change in thinking, because the horizontal flow of information becomes leading instead of your optimized silos.
Mm. That's a really interesting. So what I hear is coordinated digital thread, which is something that I think we're kind of working with at the moment with a lot of our OEMs, if you agree with me, Sam. The OEMs have different systems, different tools, different departments in silos, and then they just communicate with each other via either Excel spreadsheets, or they will produce PDFs and all of those kind of like manual, really static kind of decentralized bits of data that might already be outdated by the time they produced. And then we see the modern, from what you've said there, the modern digital thread, which is the real-time, connected, integrated, kind of a single line of data where everyone can access it in real time, and in order to become more effective and efficient and productive in their roles. So this is what we're working towards at Partful. So I'll be really interested to see how you and Sam kind of discussed the state of that and why OEM should move from coordinated digital thread to modern digital thread, and what are the steps within that.
Or maybe to be correct, sometimes I'm so picky on the words. It's not moving from to. It's you need both. The coordinated digital thread is good for static environments, for traceability, for long-term decision making. Because for long-term decision making, you don't need to answer immediately within a few hours or seconds. You can do your analysis the way you want. And this is for me also very much connected to the traditional PLM systems or ERP systems. They are designed in the coordinated manner. But when you need the connected digital thread, that is where speed is required, direct communication. And you can see that both environments exist. I call it a system of record and a system of engagement. And the system of engagement is where the connected digital thread is mandatory. And it can be even outside your organization. It can be also your customers, or it can be suppliers that provide their part information. And it doesn't come back to this traditional single system.
Mm. What's your thoughts, Sam, on it in terms of enabling a modern digital thread with real-time data updates and integration, allowing the service side of the life cycle to access data in real time in order to be productive?
I think I'd probably add one more category to that, Jos. I'd call it the uncoordinated digital thread. I think
That's the early days.
Yeah. We definitely see some of those. I think, to support equipment, whatever it is, whether it's a watch, whether it's a car, or whether it's a nuclear submarine, to support anything, you need information. You need data. You need information around the parts, information around how to manage and maintain it, assemble it, disassemble it for repairing. What are the service intervals? How often? What are the temperature thresholds? There's a whole range of things that you need to know in order to support that item. And depending on how much it's used, depending on where it's used, and depending on who it's used by, will depend on those parameters. So in order to do that, you need data. And if you as an OEM want your piece of equipment to be operational or viewed as operationally reliable for as long as possible, then you need to provide data in order that people can manage and maintain it. And currently, what we see is that the information that's needed isn't given to the people when they need it, in particular need it the most. And that's the challenge that the industry has got, is giving that information, maintaining that digital connection right the way through to that, going back to the guy in a field with his hood up, trying to stop his pages getting wet.
It reminds me of the early days of PLM also. PLM, in theory, it's about data sharing, but initially the PLM was more a vault. You dump your data there. We call it, by joke, the black hole. Data gets in, but it never gets out because only the person who put it there knew it is there.
Yeah.
It's impossible to find it.
That's really interesting. We're working like actively on it right now within Partful in order to make it unlock that black hole in a sense.
I think on that black hole as well, there's an element of reassurance. That I think some people within the end user community are so used to having no faith within that data that they will often ignore it, even if it's right. They can often ignore it because it's perceived as that black hole, and there's been no validation, and they've previously never got any worth from spending time trying to get the right information out. So they will often go find, because they're resourceful humans, they will often go and find their own ways of supporting a piece of equipment without relying on this black hole of information. That's another sort of nuance that certainly I've seen in my time.
Yeah. And in addition, you see engineers are under time pressure. They have to deliver information. So why should they also add more quality data for downstream? It's not their mission. It's often on the higher level. The need is not there. R&D has their cost. Manufacturing has their cost, and nobody has the mission to complete the horizontal information sharing. Dump your information, and then it's there somewhere. You find it instead of thinking about it could be necessary to find it back in 5 or 10 years from now.
Yeah. I think it came up in the last one that, like Jos said, engineers are under so much pressure. Once they've designed, they've worked on a project, they're on to the next one. So retrospectively going back to that engineer and saying, hey, you need to, provide all this information. The realities of the pressures of the world mean that you're just not going to get it.
I'm interested to hear from you both in terms of the harmful consequence from that practice of like dumping data into black hole and not having that horizontal sharing of data and kind of equal access to data across an OEM organization.
We were used to it. That's the problem. When we start to create also electronic infrastructure with PLM and ERP systems, we could never have a benchmark of doing things better and being proactive, because it's all about being proactive and thinking along the whole life cycle of the product data. And only, I think, when your competition starts to be better than you, that's often on management level a trigger to say, okay, let's do it. People need sometimes burning platforms to move to a new way of working. We are not so good in proactive measures that sound good, but they feel uncomfortable because we haven't done it before. And that's where we are now with digital transformation. Before, we have kept our same ways of working, but we did it more and more electronic. But we didn't have to change our business units or our missions or KPIs from people. Horizontal was most of the time not part of the mission from R&D. And now we realize this can be done, and the ones that do it first are the ones that have probably the best business benefits.
I think some organizations need a catalyst, in the face of some of this massive data challenges. They need a catalyst, and sometimes that could be a safety. The catalyst could come in the form of a safety issue. It could come in the form as a financial issue. But ultimately, they need a burning platform. They need that burning platform explaining to them, because there will be a burning platform by not providing or getting the data, but they might not see that. I remember working on a refurb project. This is when I was working for a defence contract. We won an enormous contract to refurb some military vehicles, and we were the OEM of the vehicles. We built the vehicles, so we put in a bid, expecting that we, with the understanding that we knew the vehicles because we built them 5-10 years before. When these vehicles came back in, I mean, they were totally different. I mean, there was a huge risk that we could potentially have lost a huge amount of money because we bid the refurb. The refurbishment was bid on the basis that we knew what we were refurbishing. When the truck started coming back, and it was within the first 2 or 3 that came back in, we realised that datum point was not correct, and that black hole, we'd created the black hole, or the black hole had been created, and it got this problem been mounted, and no one knew about it until it got too late.
Right. And it's interesting you're mentioning the catalyst. I think the one that is coming now is the digital product passport. If your company wants to sell in the next 5 to 10 years to the European market, you need to provide with a product the digital product passport, which are properties of which type of materials are used, is it recyclable, is it serviceable. So you really have to have the full life cycle of your product in mind. The right to repair is also one of those points of the European Green Deal. So it's coming by regulations also. It's not only the business drivers that say you can be more efficient, but also now regulations will push you in the next 4 to 6 years, depending on the type of product category, to be more and more thinking horizontal, end to end.
Yeah. And these issues are so important. Like the right to repair is such an important issue. From an environmental perspective. I remember I had to throw a washing machine away because the seal on the inside was unrepairable because the whole front was hermetically sealed. So by cracking open the front, you basically rendered the entire washing machine useless, all for like a $3 seal. I mean, it's madness that we've been viewing things this way. And I think there's originally a fear around what the right to repair would be. But actually, if they design for supportability and actually design for this from the outset, they could really seize a huge opportunity for sustainability and also service, through spares, if it's done the right way. And this is what I think I personally just have never really got my head around, why they've not seen it as an opportunity as opposed to fearing it.
Yeah, I think in the end, it's a business change. I mean, the ultimate goal of the European Union is that more product as a service, so that the manufacturer also controls the service of the product in the field and also returns it back as components or as waste. And then, if you are providing product as a service, you need to be fully horizontal connected, as efficient as possible. You need to know what's happening in the field, and because otherwise, if you're putting prices there, either you lose money or you are too expensive and you won't be competitive. But that's the long 10, 20 years vision, I would say. I mean,
yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think in the long run, definitely. But even in the short term, what we've been doing here at Partful in the past couple of months is really looking into a lot of the mid-sized OEMs across Europe, EMEA region, and also North America region. What I've noticed, I've been really digging into their kind of after-sale service support side and the digital presence that they have. It's really mind-blowing to me when we did a study mid last year around aftermarket demand, and we realized that the OEMs think on average they only lose out on 18% of the parts revenue. But actually, when we did the exact study, but on the opposite side, which is dealers, the repairers, and the end consumers, 67% of them choose to buy parts from non-OEM third-party sellers over OEMs. And there's a discrepancy there, and kind of OEMs just they don't really have the data or don't really have an understanding of how much they lose out on it. Plus, on that front, it's so easy to kind of do a bit of an audit to realize that end users and end customers can easily go on third-party sellers and platforms like eBay's, Alibaba, Amazon to purchase parts. While when you go on the OEM's website, I'd say 8 out of 10 OEMs that we've looked into don't really have a service or a spare parts area on the website that's easily accessible by their dealers and their users. So the first step that they could do, I think, from a marketing and sales kind of revenue perspective and the customer experience perspective, is making that service, support, and spare parts kind of available and accessible to their customers. And that's not the case at the moment.
Yeah. And I think exactly what you say there is that companies that recognize the value of selling spare parts, their spare parts, they have it as part of a business model. And last week I spoke with somebody. He says our 40% of our revenue comes from services, and they are selling special machinery, but 40% is service income. And so for them, it's recognized. But other companies, they grew up by producing products, and then service came later, and it never got the full attention. And I think that's the area where we are talking about. The opportunity is there, but companies haven't realized either the potential, or they haven't found the people that can lead this time of transformation. You need to have your champions in the company fighting for it.
Yeah. I think it goes back to the catalyst. There's an organisation we spoke to not so long ago. I'm trying to do the maths in my head as to what the percentage would be. I think it's something like it would be something in the region of 2%. So 2% of their revenue comes from spares. Their particular industry is a high failure rate industry, and typically you would see spares revenue in that particular industry in the region of 30 to 50%. So the fact they're only generating 2%, and they're sort of oblivious to this as well, by the way. They're oblivious and thinking that they're doing reasonably well because it's a big number. Their overall turnover is significant, but because their revenues are fairly on its own, out of context, is a big number. They think that they're doing really well. And, when we were talking to him, saying, you guys should be, this should be like 10 times more than what you're doing at the moment. Their mouths are open going, how is that even possible? There's not even an awareness that, that this is a possibility, which I find, baffling and crazy, really.
Yeah. And here I think looking at companies, how they are structured, the organization is very structured in silos with their own profit and loss.
Yeah.
And there is nobody creating this new expectation of end-to-end connectivity. The service department, probably their profit and loss are also based on current experiences, not about booming new experiences, what is possible, because that would involve others to participate, which is breaking the silos. Huh?
Yeah.
That's been so enlightening to me. I'd like to ask the next question around what position, like really unique position, are mid-sized OEMs in at the moment in terms of implementing or establishing a digital thread? What's your experience around that, Jos? And can you share some stories with us?
Yeah. Well, what I've seen in theory, everyone has the problem. If you're a mid-sized company or a large-sized company, then you still have the same issues. And often the large-sized companies have it by history. Nobody will break the good ways of working that we've done 50 years. Where in theory, a mid-sized company should be much more flexible, much more adaptable to change. The challenge in those type of companies is often that they don't have people that have time for strategy. Everyone is busy, and I've seen companies where they implemented lean thinking. That means there was almost no more thinking of anything else, of innovation. And this is the big challenge for mid-sized companies. They are not used to do strategic projects long-term they need immediate results. So they need steps in the right directions. For that, what I always experienced is you need to have a vision where you want to be in 5 to 10 years, and then you have to build your steps to get there. And even this is what small and medium enterprises can do. Where do I want to be in 5 years from now? What is blocking me? And then you can be very pragmatic without breaking the whole house. You can do every time more data-driven, more connectivity, and move towards a future environment. But you need somebody to be inspired. You need to have a vision. And then you need to trust that it's not by just buying a tool, it will solve itself. You need to have also the processes and the change coordinated. And mid-market companies, unfortunately, often, as I said, lack of time to think and look back. We are too busy. The famous jokes, you see the cartoons. This is more often a mid-market cartoon than I would say the bigger companies, because they don't have the resources and the time to step back and realize, are we doing the right things for the future?
I think I really resonate with the point where you said a tool is not a be-all, end-all. It's not going to solve all your problems. You need to start at the point of change management, setting the processes and understanding what role a new tool will play in terms of enabling that, rather than thinking that a tool will be the solution to it all. And I think we've seen that at Partful as well, that it's more around the organizational transformation in terms of the mindset and the approach and the processes in order to implement a new tool, rather than thinking that, I'm actually buying this tool so that it will do everything for me. It will solve all the problems and the challenges.
But be aware, it's not about also defining new process. You need to have first and that's the most important. You need to have a business driver why you do it. You need to have the management behind it. So there must be an opportunity, or an opportunity missed, or there is a risk for the future, and this should be the driver of your analysis. What do I need to address this opportunity? And then automatically we will come maybe to different processes and different tools to support this process. But it needs to start from the business. Otherwise, you stay in the corner of the geeks that are talking about technology and tools, and this is what the end user doesn't like. They want to understand, why are you making this change? What is the benefit of our company?
I think at the end of the day as well, it has to benefit the users, the end users as well. Like implementing a new tool has to make their day job easier and more motivating in a sense.
Yeah, maybe not easier, different.
Different, yeah. In a
Because
more efficient way, I would say.
yeah, because sometimes, I remember end users, they want to just press one button, but then with all the spare time, what are you going to do? I mean, so you need to have a reason for the change, and that's often the transformation. So installing just a little bit better tool, but keep on working the old way. And this is how I would say historically PLM started. We didn't change the ways of working with companies. We just made it electronic. And that's why you have those boring check-in, check-out of files in the CAD system.
Yeah. And I think to us that doesn't really solve the problems. It's just like taking the problem from one place to another,
right?
And just leave it there like that. I think this is why what we want to change as well within the OEM kind of community and how they look at problems. Make it electronic doesn't mean that it's better or it's faster in any way.
Exactly. If you keep on doing the same process and the same ways of working, you still do the same thing. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the definition of madness, isn't it? Doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result.
Right.
When you mention what is the business drive, why do we need to change the processes in terms of how we do things for the OEMs? From our conversation so far, I feel like the circular economy, the digital passport, the right to repair, they all are the reasons why change needs to happen from a regulatory perspective. For Sam, I think what Sam said is the kind of commercial value, the revenue opportunity is the business drive as well. And I think it all comes down to not just the digital transformation, but transforming from the existing state to a connected state and make it more horizontal, as the way you put it. So for small and mid-market OEMs, mid-sized OEMs, what are the ways or the steps they can take in order to get there?
So the first one, and that's often the painful question, is build your vision. And it's not just one size of paper where you say, we want to be the biggest in 10 years from now, or in 5 years from now, or double the revenue. But when you build your vision, also decide what are the steps to get there, business-wise, and automatically, if you start holistic and then drill down, you get into the details. And often the problem is that those companies want to be so fast, they start with the details. They're going to ask all people, give me your requirements. What do you need from our new system? And then you have a list of 500 requirements. You send them to the vendors and you select the best tool. You haven't learned anything. So really start holistic from the vision, and the vision can be make sure that we can comply with the digital thread or the digital product passport, make sure that we double our service revenue in the next 5 to 10 years, or maybe 2 years. Some have a very low service revenue, because you need to be sustainable as a business also, not only from sustainability, but also financial profitable. By drilling down, you will come to new ways of working, new needs of data connectivity. And this is then understandable, because you say it's part of our vision. Where if you start from the tools, and I've seen this many times, then people don't understand the why.
Yeah. This is really great, because I think we can really resonate from that. We've worked with clients and kind of OEM organizations where what we get is kind of a brief, like a bunch of requirements, like a list of features.
There you go. Yeah.
Your platform needs to be able to do, or capable of doing, instead of asking what do you need it to improve from a kind of top-down perspective in terms of your vision, your strategy, and your business kind of priorities. So it's completely accurate, because if it comes from a bottom-up requirement, a lot of those users tend to think about, well, what am I doing on a day-to-day kind of perspective? Am I kind of exporting things from your ERP? If that's the case, I need your platform to be able to ingest things from the ERP system, rather
Exactly.
than from a top-down approach of like the execs and the business leaders and the department leaders thinking about what are the factor of change that we need to implement. Like you said, the digital passports of the products, the right to repair, the missed out opportunity of revenue on the spare parts side of the business, and why that is. Understanding all of those root causes and the requirements from the external world, as well as internal gaps in terms of technology or even like data management, that will result in them taking different steps, rather than exporting a pick list from ERP or like a parts catalog, for example. The steps might be, well, we need to overhaul our PLM, or we need to really integrate different systems, or we need to overhaul the way we ingest data, integrate data, engage with data, or we need to train or transition the skill sets within the support and service system to make them more of a data specialist, technical specialist, or whatever it is, right? So it's less about, I need your platform, or we need a tool to be able to favorite different parts or ingest PDFs. Like maybe at that point, when they realize that the root causes are data management, the ingestion of data is not even like required for PDFs anymore. It's like maybe an integration into the PLM or ERP system that they need. Right?
I think we could dive in a lot of details, and I think we are planning to go also in more details.
Yes, 100%. So we've got a couple of questions from the audience from LinkedIn. So Sam put out a poll last week asking people to send in questions, but also asking what their priority is at the moment, their focus is. And interestingly, 67% of them saying that they are currently focusing on PLM implementation. And they sent in a couple of questions around PLM implementation. So the first one is, when should a mid-market or mid-sized OEM start to think about implementing a PLM system?
Okay. So in theory, everyone should think about it. But if it's a single system, that's the question. And because PLM is for me more a strategy of sharing data across the life cycle. And often you see the PLM system is the main system to manage product data as a source. But it's not the only system. There will be an ERP system, there might be a manufacturing execution system, or even CRM management. So when you implement PLM, make sure you implement an open structure without proprietary information storage, because you need to connect to other disciplines. You need to be shareable outside R&D. And I would say my success I've seen in PLM implementations is, don't start with R&D. Start first with the end-to-end, for example, BOM process from quoting to EBOM, MBOM, SBOM, because then everyone learns to share. And then once you have your backbone, start drilling down in the silos and connect them. Where many PLM implementations in the past failed because they started with the engineers with all their complex scenarios and change scenarios, and the system became too complex for any other discipline. And they say, okay, we'll buy our own tool because it's more simple. So start horizontal with a common process like governance or BOM development, new product development, and then go into the disciplines. Don't start the other way around. That's the lesson learned, I would say.
That's great. How can PLM help with service and supportability of their products?
It's obvious. I mean, but it can only help if you make the data searchable and available and visible. And as we discussed in the beginning, the black hole, that is the traditional PLM implementation. Everyone puts their data there, but they don't have the intention or even the drive to make the data shareable. And sharing data should be point number one.
Yeah.
And if you don't implement your PLM as an engineering tool, but as an information backbone, then automatically it will connect to service data.
I think what we've seen so far is that mindset of like PLM systems are for engineering department only, and it becomes an engineering tool rather than an organizational kind of data management and transformational tool, which is great. What are the key to success in implementing a PLM?
Well, it starts with the vision and the business needs that you want to implement, and do it step by step. PLM is really a journey. I've seen problems where companies spend $1 million on the PLM system, and then the management said, okay, we put the money, why it's not working yet? I mean, you need to go step by step, because both your implementer needs to be also a partner that has experience in the industry, and both you don't know what the real end goal will be. You have your top of the mountain, your vision, and you need to make sure that all your steps go in that direction. But each step should be sometimes a minimum viable product that at least you can operate the process, maybe not in the optimal way, but at least you can see it works, and then you can improve it in the next wave. Now, often we also too many times focus on the 100% solution instead of the 80% or the 60% solution to start with.
I think maybe if I can add one more to that. Surely, Josh, you're missing off. Bringing in a Flying Dutchman. That's surely a key to the successful implementation of a PLM, isn't it?
Right. I mean, the reason I exist is because I coach so many companies, and I'm not locked into one company, and sharing experiences and looking at the PLM from the people side, from the process side, and it's so important. Right?
Yeah, totally. I imagine the depth and breadth of experience that you've got, bringing that resource in externally from an organisation, is so helpful. You would have an unbiased view of the world, which is, I think, usually important, because I think sometimes people get a little bit entrenched. Yeah. And two, the depth of the experience across multiple industries, the lessons learned are applicable to everybody, I guess.
Yeah. But we're all humans, and we also have politics. And even if you bring the brightest ideas, you still have to also respect the culture of the company, which is quite different also all around the world.
Yeah.
Some people like innovation, others say, wow, it has not been before, it's a risk. Yeah. So,
yeah. That's amazing. I think we are at the end of all of the questions now. Just to circle back on the point earlier, we are going to have a couple of future episodes to dive deeper into the system of engagement, which is basically a bit of a nature of our product as Partful, providing a platform of engagement between the dealers, the end users of the product, and the service kind of side of the business, which goes all the way up to engineering and design. And I'm quite excited to also talk about circular economy, which is the very topic that you're passionate about, Jos. And we've been talking about right to repair as well between Sam and myself for a long time. So really, really excited to get into that conversation in the next episodes as well. So do keep an eye out. I think we're at the end of the episode today, and I'd like to thank you, Jos, for appearing on this episode and sharing your experiences and knowledge about PLM implementation and how that can affect the service and supportability side of the business. If you guys are out there would like to follow Jos's work, I highly recommend the Virtual Dutchman, his blog, which you might have already heard of. He's very active on LinkedIn, sharing content constantly. Please do give him a follow. Also follow Sam as well. He shares content constantly around service and supportability and after sales side of business. And that's it for today. And thank you very much.
Great stuff.
Okay. Thank you, Tanya. I think it was very pragmatic and educational, I hope, especially for small and medium enterprises, that they take this, 45 minutes to digest
Definitely.
what is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really enjoyed the conversation, Josh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and talk to you soon.